Welcome to Watch the Book. Today we present The Hobbit by J.R.R. Tolkien, published in 1937. In a comfortable hole in the ground lived a hobbit named Bilbo Baggins. His home was not a nasty, dirty hole, but a luxurious hobbit hole called Bag End, which meant true comfort. Bilbo was a well-to-do hobbit considered highly respectable because he never had any adventures. He was a Baggins, but also a Took, a family known for their adventurous streak. One quiet morning, as Bilbo smoked his pipe at his door, an old man appeared. He had a tall, pointed blue hat, a long gray cloak, a silver scarf, and an immense white beard. The old man introduced himself as Gandalf, a wandering wizard of great renown, known for his remarkable tales and excellent fireworks, much to Bilbo's initial discomfort. The wizard sought a companion for an adventure, but Bilbo, a true lover of quiet comforts, firmly refused. Adventures, he declared, were nasty, disturbing, uncomfortable things. Despite his refusal, Bilbo politely invited Gandalf for tea the next day, a decision he almost immediately came to regret. Before leaving, Gandalf scratched a queer sign on the door. The next day a loud ring announced, not Gandalf, but a dwarf with a blue beard tucked into a golden belt. His name was Dwalin, and he pushed inside as if he had been expected. Soon after, another dwarf arrived, the very old-looking Balin with a white beard and a scarlet hood. Bilbo grew flustered, becoming deeply worried his supply of seed cakes might run short. The bell rang out once more, admitting the brothers Fili and Kili, two more dwarves with their blue hoods and yellow beards. Bilbo's quiet, orderly tea time was rapidly becoming a loud, boisterous throng. Before the hobbit could even collect his wits, 5 more dwarves arrived in a great tumble: Dori, Nori, Ori, Oin, and Gloin. His pantry was promptly raided for ale, porter, and cakes. A loud knock, not a ring, announced the final arrivals. 4 more dwarves fell in, followed by a laughing Gandalf. The last and most important of all was the great Thorin Oakenshield. With 13 dwarves and a wizard gathered, the hobbit's larder was completely emptied for a great feast. Bilbo, his appetite lost, sat flummoxed as his home filled with their talk and laughter. After the meal, the dwarves brought out their instruments. Thorin took up his beautiful golden harp, and its sudden sweet music swept Bilbo's spirit away to dark lands under strange moons. As the fire flickered and the room grew dark, the dwarves began to sing. It was a deep-throated song of their ancient home, of the misty mountains cold, and of their long-forgotten gold. The song awoke something Tookish within Bilbo. He yearned to see the great mountains and hear the pine trees, but a sudden flame outside made him shudder with thoughts of plundering dragons. Thorin finally spoke of their true quest, a long and perilous journey to reclaim their treasure from the dragon Smaug. At the mention that some may never return, Bilbo let out a terrified shriek. After reviving, Bilbo overheard a dwarf doubting his use, calling him more grosser than burglar. The Tookish pride inside him won, and Bilbo, indignant, declared he would prove them all wrong. Gandalf unveiled a map made by Thorin's grandfather. It showed a secret entrance into the lonely mountain, a hidden passage to the lower halls marked by a special secret rune. Gandalf then produced a small and curious silver key. It had a long barrel and intricate wards, and it belonged with the map. Thorin reverently fastened it upon a chain around his neck. Thorin recounted the tale of how the great dragon Smaug descended upon the mountain in a storm of fire, destroying the town of Dale and claiming all their wealth for himself. In Rivendell, their spirits were restored. Elrond, the master of the house, examined their map, and in the light of a crescent moon he discovered secret letters hidden upon it. The hidden moon letters formed a cryptic message: "Stand by the grey stone when the thrush knocks, and the setting sun with the last light of Durin's day will shine upon the keyhole." The next morning the company rode away from the last homely house, their hearts filled with new hope for the great adventure that still lay before them in the wild lands to the east. The high mountain passes were perilous. One night a terrific thunder battle raged. Great stone giants came out in the storm and hurled massive rocks at one another for a grim game. Their shelter in a dry cave proved a deadly trap. Goblins swarmed from a hidden crack in the rock, capturing the entire company and dragging them deep into the heart of the mountain. They were brought before the tremendous great goblin. When he saw Thorin's sword, a famed elvish blade the goblins had named Biter, the goblin leader howled with pure rage. Suddenly the cavern plunged into darkness. A single sword, Glamdring, flashed with its own cold light as Gandalf struck down the great goblin, freeing the dwarves from their chains. In the frantic escape through the dark tunnels, Dori was grabbed from behind. Bilbo, who was on his shoulders, rolled off into the blackness, bumped his head, and was utterly lost. When Bilbo awoke, he was completely alone in the pitch dark. Groping blindly on the floor, his hand met a tiny ring of cold metal. He put it in his pocket, a true turning point in his career. He went on down into the deeps until his feet splashed into an icy cold subterranean lake. From the dark water emerged a small, slimy creature with two huge, luminous pale eyes. It was Gollum. The creature proposed a game of riddles. If Bilbo won, he would be shown the way out, but if he lost, he would be eaten. Having no other choice, Bilbo nervously agreed to the deadly game. They traded riddles in the dark. When Bilbo was stumped by the final one, he panicked and cried out for time. Time, which by the purest luck happened to be the correct answer. For his own last question, Bilbo fumbled for an idea and asked the only thing he could think of. "What have I got in my pocket?" The creature, unable to guess, had lost the game. Gollum let out a despairing shriek. His precious ring was gone. His eyes burned with a green fire as he realized what the Hobbit had in his pocket, and he came racing after him. As Bilbo fled, the ring slipped onto his finger and he vanished from sight. Gollum passed by without seeing him. The Hobbit then cautiously followed, hoping the creature would lead him out. With a great leap over Gollum's head, he fled down the final passage. He squeezed through the goblin-guarded door, his buttons bursting off, and escaped into the open air at last. After finding his friends, they were forced to flee once more. As dusk fell, the howling of wolves filled the air. They scrambled up into the trees just as the great warg pack arrived. They were trapped in the warg's meeting place. Gandalf from his high perch rained down magical pine cones that burst into brilliant blue and green fire, scattering the enraged wolves below. Goblins arrived and set fire to the trees. Just as all hope seemed lost, the Lord of the Eagles swept down, seizing the dwarves from the branches and carrying them away into the night. The Eagles brought them to the house of Beorn, a huge and powerful man who could change his shape into that of a great black bear. He was a stern but just master of his lands. Hearing their tale of the goblins, Beorn offered his aid. He provided the company with ponies and provisions for their journey to the edge of the great forest of Mirkwood. At the very edge of the dark and tangled forest, Gandalf left them. His final solemn warning echoed in their ears as he rode away. "Don't leave the path." Days into the oppressive gloom, they reached an enchanted stream. While crossing by boat, poor Bombur fell into the black water and was instantly plunged into a deep, magical sleep. Starving and hopeless, they were tempted from the path by visions of a wood elf feast. But each time they approached, the lights would vanish, leaving them utterly lost in the woods. After the lights vanished a third time, Bilbo found himself alone and was attacked by a giant spider. He fought back bravely, and after slaying the beast, he named his small sword Sting. He soon discovered the dwarves hanging in spider webs, wrapped like flies in a larder. Using his wits, his ring, and his courage, Bilbo managed to cut all of his friends free from the webs. A desperate battle ensued. The dwarves, sick and weary, fought back against the spider horde. Bilbo used his invisibility to aid them, and at last they drove the loathsome creatures away. Thorin, captured alone after the battle with the spiders, was brought before the Elven King. The king questioned him sternly about his quest, but the proud dwarf refused to speak of treasure or purpose. Soon after, the rest of the exhausted dwarves were also taken prisoner. They refused to speak of their quest, and so the angered Elven King had each of them locked away in a separate cell, deep within his stone palace. Hidden by his ring, Bilbo explored the elven palace for weeks. He eventually discovered the secret water gate, where empty wine barrels were sent down the river to lands outside the forest. He stole the guards' keys while he slept and freed the dwarves. With much difficulty, he managed to pack each of them, grumbling and protesting, into an empty barrel from the king's cellar. As merry elves rolled the barrels through a trapdoor into the stream, Bilbo, with no one left to pack him, grabbed the last one and plunged into the cold, dark water just in time. The barrels floated down the forest river and eventually emerged into the wide expanse of the long lake, where they were guided by raft elves to the shore beside Lake Town, the city of men. That night, Bilbo freed the sore and miserable dwarves. Thorin, though ragged and weary, presented himself to the master of Lake Town as the king under the mountain at last returned. The people of the town, remembering the old songs of flowing gold, celebrated the dwarves' arrival with great joy, helping them recover their strength for the final stage of their journey. After a fortnight, the company journeyed to the foot of the lonely mountain. The land all about it was a bleak and barren wasteland known as the Desolation of the Dragon. For days they searched the western slopes in vain for the secret door. They became glum and hopeless, sitting on their little grassy ledge, unable to find any way into the mountain. But on Durin's day, as the autumn sun was setting, a thrush knocked a snail against a gray stone. A last red ray of light fell upon the rock face and revealed the hidden keyhole. Thorin's silver key turned in the lock. With a snap, a section of the rock wall swung inwards, revealing a dark, silent passage that led down into the very heart of the mountain. Bilbo's heart trembled, but he crept down the tunnel alone. At the bottom, a red glow grew brighter, and he heard the unmistakable, deep, gurgling snore of a vast, sleeping animal. He peered into the lowest hall and his breath was taken away. There lay Smaug the Golden, a vast red dragon, fast asleep upon a countless and unimaginable pile of treasure. Overcoming his immense fear, Bilbo stole to the edge of the hoard, seized a single great two-handled cup, and then fled back up the tunnel as fast as his feet could carry him. But the dragon, even in his sleep, knew his treasure to an ounce. With a rage that shook the mountain to its roots, Smaug burst from the front gate, soaring into the air to hunt the thief. The dragon fell upon the mountainside in a storm of fire. The dwarves made it back inside the tunnel just in time as Smaug smashed the secret entrance, trapping them deep inside. Invisible, Bilbo went down the tunnel again to gather information. He engaged the wily dragon in a clever conversation of riddles, flattering the ancient worm to learn more. Smaug, pleased by the hobbit's flattery, rolled over to boast of his diamond waistcoat. In doing so, he unknowingly revealed a single large bare patch in the hollow of his left breast. Bilbo escaped again, but Smaug, now deeply angered and suspicious, flew from the mountain. His mind was set on vengeance against the lake men, from whom he guessed the company had received help. Trapped inside, the dwarves explored the great treasury of their ancestors. Thorin, seeking the legendary Arkenstone, armed Bilbo in a beautiful coat of dwarven-made mithril. Deep in the hoard, Bilbo's hand was drawn to a great white gem that shone with its own inner light. It was the heart of the mountain. He took the Arkenstone and hid it in his deepest pocket. As Smaug's fiery rage fell upon Lake Town, the people were not entirely unprepared. A grim man of Dale's lineage named Bard rallied the archers to defend their wooden city upon the water. Smaug set the town ablaze. The master fled in his boat, but Bard stood his ground upon a burning platform, shooting with his great yew-bow until only one black arrow remained. An old thrush, who had heard Bilbo's tale, flew to Bard and told him of the dragon's weak spot. As Smaug swooped low, Bard loosed his final arrow, sending it straight to the mark. With a shriek that felled trees and split stone, Smaug crashed down in ruin, his fiery end turning the lake to steam. Bard was hailed by the people as their hero and their king. But news of the dragon's death spread quickly. The Elvenking marched with an army to claim a share of the treasure, joining forces with Bard and the now homeless men of Esgaroth. Thorin, learning of Smaug's demise from a raven, fortified the mountain's gate. He refused to parley with the armed host outside, his heart growing hard with the dragon sickness of the gold. The lust of the treasure was now heavy on Thorin. He promised nothing to Bard under threat of force, and shot an arrow at his messenger, declaring the lonely mountain under siege. That night Bilbo, believing the standoff was both foolish and wrong, made a desperate plan. He took the Arkenstone and slipped away from the mountain fortress unnoticed. He went to the camp of men and elves, and there he gave the Arkenstone to Bard, to be used as a powerful bargaining tool against the stubbornness of the Dwarf King. As Bilbo was returning, he met Gandalf, who had reappeared in the camp. "Well done, Mr. Baggins," said the wizard with a knowing look. "There is always more about you than anyone expects." The next day, when Bard presented the Arkenstone, Thorin was enraged by Bilbo's betrayal. He cast the Hobbit out, but agreed to pay a 14th share of the treasure for the stone's return. At that moment, a great army of 500 dwarves from the Iron Hills, led by Thorin's cousin Dain, arrived to support their kin. A terrible battle between the former allies seemed imminent. Suddenly Gandalf appeared between the hosts, crying, "Halt!" A vast army of goblins and wargs had come upon them all, seeking vengeance for their slain king and the spoils of the mountain. The battle of 5 armies began. Elves, men, and dwarves forged a desperate alliance, luring the goblins into the valley between the arms of the mountain, fighting together against the common foe. The fighting was terrible. Victory for the allies seemed uncertain as the sheer number of goblins threatened to overwhelm their lines. The battle raged across the valley, a chaotic swirl of desperate combat against the common foe. From the gate, Thorin and his 12 companions issued forth in shining armor. "To me, O my kinsfolk," he cried, and charged into the fray, rallying the faltering armies with his valor. Thorin fought with mighty strokes, but his numbers were too few. He was hemmed in by the bodyguard of Bolg the Goblin Chief and fell, pierced with many spears, his nephews falling beside him. Just as all hope seemed lost, a cry went up, "The eagles are coming!" Down they swept from the mountains, turning the tide. With them came Beorn, now in the shape of a giant bear. Beorn's wrath was like a clap of thunder. He scattered the goblin bodyguard, crushed their chief, and drove the enemy into a terrified rout. The great battle was finally won. In a tent after the battle, Bilbo knelt by the dying Thorin. The Dwarf King took back his angry words. "If more of us valued food and cheer above hoarded gold," he said, "it would be a merrier world." They buried Thorin deep beneath the mountain, with the Arkenstone upon his breast. Dain became the new king under the mountain, and the great treasure was shared fairly among all. Bilbo, taking only 2 small chests of treasure, began his long journey home with Gandalf. He bid a fond farewell to his dwarven friends, who were now busy restoring their ancient kingdom. At last, on May the 1st, he came to a rise and saw his own hill in the distance. He had gone there and back again. But arriving at his own door, he found his belongings being sold at auction. If you enjoyed this journey to Middle-earth, there are many more stories waiting to be told. Please subscribe to watch the book and join us for our next literary adventure.